Welcome, everyone. Today we are here to kick off our next workshop for the Amazon QuickSight Fall Learning Series. My name is Jill Florent, and I'm on the QuickSight Customer Success team. I'm here with Raj Jayaraman, and he is one of our QuickSight Specialist Solutions Architects who's going to be leading the session today. Just wanted to give a couple of key kind of getting started items. If you're here today to learn more about how to administer QuickSight, especially working with QuickSight APIs, then you're in the right place. We are going to be going into a fair amount of depth today on working with APIs and looking at some use cases that come up fairly frequently when we're looking at kind of embedding and ISV use cases, and most importantly, understanding how you can kind of manage and operationalize things in QuickSight as an administrator. You should have an AWS account with admin privileges, and specifically for QuickSight, you'll want an enterprise account rather than a standard account and have admin privileges, and we will be working with Cloud9. So hopefully all of those things apply to you, and you're going to be in for a really information-packed session. Again, we're trying today to not just present to you, but give you a chance to follow along and get in-depth hands-on activities. So one of the other goals that we have today is we're going to try and answer as many questions as we can. So in the right side of your screen, you'll notice that there's a chat window and a questions area. And so most of the questions that come up today are you're just going to post into the questions area. I did want to call out that if you wanted to save the answers to questions that you post, you're going to want to cut and paste those into a separate notes file. We don't save this or share it with you afterwards. But we do have a QuickSight community, and that is a good place to get questions, to ask your questions and receive answers. And we're actually planning in just the next few weeks to have some major updates to the community. So you may want to kind of prepare to not only attend sessions like this, but to explore the way the community can help get questions answered. So excited to move in that direction soon. Wanted to flag that we are recording the session today, and you will have access to this after the workshop. If you haven't done so already, you're going to want to probably bookmark the QuickSight YouTube channel because this is actually part of our regular process. So this will be posted by the end of the week. The other thing I did want to let you know is that we'll be sharing content today from a workshop, and I'll share this link in the chat window with you on how to access materials for the workshop. But with that, I think I'd like to go ahead and simply turn it over to Raj to dive into the topics that we're going to be looking into today. So give me just a moment to change presenters.
Sure. Thanks, Jill. Hello, everyone.
Yep, we can hear you. Great. So take it away, Raj.
All right, perfect. Thank you, Jill. And hey, everyone. Thank you for joining the session today. My name is Raj. I'm a specialist solutions architect for QuickSight. And today we'll be saying how we can use QuickSight APIs to do measure of the QuickSight administration tasks. So imagine you are an independent software vendor. You spend a significant amount of time developing a dashboard, but then you have a new client onboarding into your application. You want to create a similar dashboard for them, but with a different data. Using QuickSight APIs, you can create templates of dashboards and onboard multiple clients, so it's easier for you to recreate those dashboards without any manual efforts, and you can automate the whole flow programmatically as well. So you can use existing data sets, data sources, dashboards, analysis, all of those resources. You can programmatically create a template And using the metadata of existing resources, you can create new resources for each of your clients, both in the same AWS account or in a different AWS account or an environment. Pull me through this metaphor here. I've been working on a template that my team could use to create their own presentations when they want to present something about a QuickSight topic. So I've been creating this today. So this can simply be used by my team. They can plug in their own data, so they don't have to work again to structure it, format it, and they don't have the overhead of creating the template again. Using a similar approach, you can use an existing dashboard and onboard new clients. We'll be going through the workshop steps that is detailed here. This workshop walks us through creating users and groups in QuickSight programmatically. Then we'll be talking about namespaces that enables us to use multi-tenancy within QuickSight. We'll also see how we can apply custom permissions to a user so they are restricted access in QuickSight from creating or using some of the features that QuickSight offers. Also, we'll take a look at account customizations that allows us to enable a theme, for example. So any user who comes in and creates an analysis, they start off with a theme at the account level. This workshop has some prerequisites. So you should have a QuickSight enterprise account set up in your AWS account already. And you should have an AWS account with administrative privileges. You also need a little bit of understanding of shell scripting because we will be running through various CLI commands in this workshop, and there will be very little QuickSight user interface involved. Here, I'll be using my AWS account, and I will be launching a Cloud9 environment that enables me to run all the CLI commands throughout this workshop. I'll walk you through creating this Cloud9 environment, and also I'll walk you through creating a CloudFormation template that is part of this workshop that creates a sample analysis dashboard and dataset that we'll be using throughout this workshop. Now let's get started with setting up Cloud9. I have my Cloud9 console open here, and at the top right, I'll click on Create Environment to create my first environment. I'll provide a name for the environment. I'll choose Next. I'll leave all of the options as default, but I will change the cost saving settings to 4 hours. So the environment's underlying EC2 instance is stopped after 4 hours so that no additional cost is being incurred. I'll choose Next, and I'll choose Create Environment. While this environment is being created, let's take a look at the CloudFormation template that we'll be using that will create the necessary analysis and dashboard and resources for us within QuickSight. So in the same workshop link, if you navigate to step 4, you'll see Launch this CloudFormation sample. I'll open this at my end so it launches the CloudFormation console for me. Once I have the console open for me, I'll choose Next. I'll provide a name for the stack. Now, the QuickSight identity region, the QuickSight user, are the parameters that we'll be obtaining from Cloud9. We'll be running a few commands and a script that will provide us the QuickSight identity region and QuickSight user corresponding to what we have in our QuickSight environment. Now, a QuickSight identity region is a region where all the metadata related to a QuickSight user or group are provisioned. So any API call or CLI command that you run that creates a user or modifies a user needs to be done at the QuickSight identity region. So for example, let's say you have Cloud9 created in US West 2, but your QuickSight identity region is US East 1, where all of your user-related data are provisioned. So for every CLI command that you run, you need to append the command with a region parameter and pass US East 1, that is the identity region. The identity region is determined by QuickSight based on the closest availability of your AWS account. And that is determined and used by QuickSight when you create a new QuickSight subscription in your AWS account. To fill this up, let's go back to Cloud9. Now that the Cloud9 environment is launched, let's run a script that will obtain the QuickSight identity region as well as the QuickSight user that I'll be using for this workshop. To do that, we can download a package that is part of this workshop. If you navigate to step 3, you'll see a workshop environment zip file. Now, this environment zip file contains multiple scripts, which each pertaining to different exercise in this workshop. So an exercise 1 would contain creating users in groups, and you'll see corresponding scripts with CLI commands that you can easily launch and use within Cloud9. I'll download this and I'll upload this to my Cloud9 environment. To upload that file, once you have downloaded the zip file, unzip the package and choose File at the top left and choose Upload Local Files. I'll quickly upload it into my Cloud9 environment at my end. At the bottom left, you can see that the files are being uploaded to my Cloud9 environment now. So once that is open, so once the folder is uploaded, click on the folder and expand, and you'll see a folder called pre-built commands and a runmefirst.sh file. Open the runmefirst.sh file. Now this file has a script that will provide you the QuickSight identity region as well as the QuickSight username that you can use in this workshop. So let me run this file. I'll choose Y to install the scripts. Now, once the script executes, you'll see that the script is provided with our current AWS account ID and a corresponding QuickSight username that is a QuickSight user that I already have in my QuickSight environment with admin privileges. And that is detailed here, saying that the QuickSight user I have mentioned here is an admin within QuickSight. And also we have the QuickSight identity region as US East 1, where information about this QuickSight user is stored within QuickSight. Now that we have these information, let's copy this into a text file so we can refer to it later throughout the workshop. And with this information, let's go back to CloudFormation and provide the identity region and the QuickSight username to complete creating the template and provision the analysis and dashboards. I'll copy the QuickSight identity region from the script here. And also I'll copy the QuickSight username. The reason that we're providing the QuickSight username and the identity region here is because this CloudFormation template will create datasets and analysis and dashboards, but we need to provide to which user has access to open this in the QuickSight console. So when we're providing the QuickSight username here, we're letting this template know that after you provision, assign permissions to those analysis and dashboards so that this user, QuickSight user, can open it in the QuickSight console and edit and use it. I'll choose next. I'll choose next here. We're not making any changes for this CloudFormation template. And let's click on Create Stack. While this template is being created and the stack is being created, I'll quickly open up my QuickSight environment and show what are the resources that I have currently. This is the QuickSight subscription that I have open that corresponds to my AWS account. So this is my AWS account ID. You can confirm that, where we have launched our Cloud9 environment as well as our CloudFormation stack. And currently, the account name that I've used for my QuickSight subscription is my AWS account ID as well. And this is the username that I'm currently logged into QuickSight as, and that is the username that we have provided in CloudFormation, as well as what we obtained from the Cloud9 script that we ran. While the CloudFormation template is running and the resources are being created in QuickSight, let's go back to Cloud9 and see what are the different commands that we'll be going through today. On the left, under Workshop Environment 2, expand the pre-built command folder and you'll see different folders that each correspond to different exercises that we'll be seeing today. The first exercise that we'll be seeing is creating users and groups. So expand the users and groups folder and you'll see the different exercises that correspond to what you have in the workshop link that was posted earlier. So using these scripts, you can simply launch or double click on a script and the corresponding command would load into Cloud9 and that you can easily run. The very first command that we'll be seeing today is creating a new QuickSight user using CLI. With QuickSight, you can integrate or federate users into QuickSight, or you can pre-create users so that when if you want to onboard new users into QuickSight and share some resources with them, you can pre-create those users, share the necessary dashboards or analysis with them. So the next time that they log in, they get access directly to the resources that you shared with them. For example, consider a use case where you created a dashboard and you want to share that dashboard with 20 different external users. You know the email address of those users, And you do not want to add them to your AWS account. Rather, you just want to allow them access to read those dashboards or view those dashboards only. In this case, you can go into QuickSight and using API or CLI commands, you can register those users. So you can create an individual user for each of the external users that you want to provide access to, and you can share that dashboard with all of those users. So all they have to do is they can navigate into QuickSight console using their username and password credentials, and they'll have access to the dashboard. Let's take the first command that we'll be running to create a new QuickSight user. The CLI command that we'll be using today is called register user. And for this command, we'll be passing the AWS account ID. Here, the environment variable AAI is created by the script that we ran earlier. So this AAI refers to our current AWS account ID that is shown here at the bottom. The second parameter that we'll be passing to this command is called namespace. Now, namespace is a concept in QuickSight that you can use to logically separate all of your users in groups so that a user in one namespace, they cannot see the users in other namespace. Using this, you can enable multi-tenancy within a single QuickSight subscription. We'll talk about namespace in detail in the upcoming exercise, but currently for this user that we are creating in QuickSight, we'll be using the namespace as default. We're not creating any new namespaces yet. The second parameter that we'll be using is called identity type. Now, identity type in QuickSight refers to where you have the information or what type of QuickSight user you want to provision. So you can have two different values for identity type. We are using QuickSight as the identity type here, meaning that we are not mapping this QuickSight user that we are creating to any IAM user or a role that we have in our account. This is similar to inviting a user via email within QuickSight. So for example, if I go into the QuickSight console, and if I click on my username at the top right and go into Manage QuickSight, I'll have an option to invite users. So if I click on Invite Users, I can provide a username and I can choose Add. So here I can provide an email address for this user that I just want to create, and I can choose the role. And here I have an option to choose if they are an IAM user or not. So I may have an IAM user in my IAM console created in my AWS account that I can map this QuickSight user to. Or if I choose no here, this user will not be mapped to any IAM resource that I have in my account. Rather, the user's information will be stored and managed by QuickSight. This would trigger an email to the email address that I provisioned here. And based on that email, the user can go into QuickSight, provide their own password that they can use for subsequent login into QuickSight. They do not have access to any of the AWS console or resources, and they can only navigate into QuickSight and use the QuickSight resources that you shared with them, or if they are an author, they can create new resources. So in the command that we have in Cloud9, we'll be creating a new QuickSight user who is not mapped to any IAM resource. So here, identity type is QuickSight. But if you want to map this user to an IAM user or a role, you can change the identity type to IAM. The next parameter that we'll be passing is called user role. Now the user role determines what type of user that we are creating and what access they'll have in QuickSight. We are using reader as the value here, meaning that we are creating a reader in QuickSight who can only come in, look at dashboards, interact with the dashboard, but they cannot create any dashboards or analysis or datasets within QuickSight. If you want your users the ability to create resources, you can create them as author. And if you want your users the ability to go and manage QuickSight, including inviting new users, purchasing more Spice capacity, you can create them as admin instead of reader or author. And you can use that value here as the user role. The next parameter that we'll be passing is called email, which maps to the email address of the user. I'm using a dummy email address here. The reason that I'm not using a specific email is since we are using the CLI command, the output of the command will provide us with the URL that we can use to set our password for this user. Once we run this command, I'll show you the output of the command, including that URL. Next, we are passing the username parameter. So this defines the username that we want our user to have within QuickSight. And finally, we have the region parameter that denotes the IR environment variable. The IR environment variable here maps to the identity region. So this will be US East 1. This means that all of the information about this user is stored and managed by QuickSight in US East 1 region. Now that we have our command and all of our parameters defined, I'll choose run. And once this command is executed, you can see the output of the command that is shown here. We have the status as 201, meaning that we did not get any significant errors running this command. And under user section, we have the different details about the user that we just created in QuickSight. So we have the username that we passed to the CLI command. We have the principal ID that uniquely denotes or identifies this user. We have the role that we passed, and we have the active status as false, meaning that this user has not used their invitation URL to create a password for them and access QuickSight. We'll do that in just a bit. We also have the email parameter that we passed to the CLI command, and we also have the ARN. Now, the ARN in AWS uniquely identifies a resource. So for example, we have the US East 1, that is the identity region here, and the AWS account ID that we are having this user as part of. And we also have the user parameter here denoting that this resource is a user in QuickSight. And the default that is shown here is the namespace in which we provision them. That is the default as the value that we provided in the CLI command. And finally, we have the username. All of these values together identify this QuickSight user that we just created. Now, what if you create a group in QuickSight with the same name? You could still do it, but that will be uniquely identified by the value group here instead of user. So this way there are no conflicts. Now the other parameter that we received as an output from this command is called the user invitation URL. So if you are inviting a user within QuickSight, they'll get an email with the invitation URL from the email address that you provided here. Since we are using a CLI command, we can copy this invitation URL and open it in a private window. And when opening that URL, you can see I have an option to provide a password for the user that we just created. I'll provide a password. And I'll choose create account and sign in. You'll notice that the account is active now. So when we run the command, we have the active status as false. Now that we provided a password, the active status should turn into true. And I'll choose continue. And I'll provide the email address and the password that we just provisioned. Let me verify the username again. Okay. Once I provide the username and password that I just set, you can see that the user has been created and I can log in as the user here. I'll leave this private window open on the side. We can revisit it once we create additional resources. Now that we have created a reader in QuickSight, consider a use case where you may have 20 different users who all want to view a particular dashboard. Now, you can share that dashboard with all of those 10 individual users, or you can create a group in QuickSight, add those 10 users to the group, and you can share the dashboard with that group. This way, creating a group reduces your management overhead and simplifies the process of sharing resources within QuickSight. Let's see how we can create a new group in QuickSight. In Cloud9, under the pre-built commands and users and groups folder, open up exercise 2.1. And this exercise has the command to create a group called create-group. This CLI command takes a AWS account ID as input, takes a namespace as input, and additional parameter that we'll be passing to this command is called group-name, which defines the name that we want to give our group, and we'll be passing the identity region as well. Let's execute this command. Now that we have run this command, you'll see the output that shows the group name. That is the name that we passed to the CLI command, its principal ID, and its corresponding ARN. Here, you'll notice that instead of users, we have group, signifying that this resource is a group within QuickSight. And next we have our namespace name that is default. And also we have the name for the group that we just provided in the command. Now that we have created this group, let's go back to QuickSight as our admin user and check for any new resources that CloudFormation created for us. Go into the QuickSight analysis section. And here, if you'll notice, CloudFormation created a new analysis for me called QSTCF-analysis. By going to dashboards, I'll see a QSTCF-dashboard created for me as well. And similarly, I should have a new dataset called QSTCF dataset. All of these resources have been created by the CloudFormation template that we launched earlier. So if I go into the CloudFormation console, I should see all the resources that it created for me. And those resources are available for me to use in my QuickSight console. Since we created a group, let's go into dashboards and share this dashboard that CloudFormation created for me with a new group. So I'll open the dashboard. I'll choose share and I'll click on share dashboard. And here I can search for the user or a group that I want to share to. Let me look up the group. Now default-reader group is the group that we just created. I'll select that. I'll give them co-owner permission for this dashboard and I'll choose share and confirm. Now that we have allowed this group access to this dashboard, no matter how many users we add to the group, they will all have access to this dashboard. So this way, even if you are having hundreds of users and you want to share a dashboard with them, you can simply add them to the group and they should have access to the dashboard. Let's go back into Cloud9 and see how we can add a user to a group. Open up exercise 4.1 and you should see a command called create group membership. This CLI command will be used to add a user to a group of our choice. This takes the AWS account ID as input, takes a namespace as input, and it takes a group name to which we want to add the user. And the member name parameter denotes the QuickSight user that we want to add to this group name that we specify here. Let's run this command. Once this command is executed, you'll see that the member that we specified, that is the QuickSight user, is added to the group that we specified. Now, if you want to check if if you want to check a group to see which QuickSight users are part of a group, you can run another command called list group memberships. Let's try that out and see who are the different members of this new group that we just created. Open up exercise 4.2 and you should see the command list group memberships that takes a AWS account ID and namespace values, and also it takes a group name that we want to check and show who the users are part of. Let's run this command. And the output of the command shows that on the users that we created called default-reader1 is part of the group default-reader group. Now, this command can come in handy when you have new users coming in and you want to check if a particular user is part of a group. And if they are not, you can add them to the group. So you can run this command or API call, and thereby from the output of the CLI command, you can determine if a user needs to be added to a group or if they are already present. Now, on the contrary, if you have a QuickSight user and you might want to know what groups they are part of. QuickSight supports an API call just to do that, wherein you can list out all of the groups that a user is part of. So if you open exercise 4.3, you'll see a command called list user groups. This CLI command takes the username as input and shows what groups they are part of. So let's run this command. And we can see that the reader that we created using CLI called default-reader1 is part of the group default-reader group. Using this command, you can create a custom script that checks one or more users in your account to see if they're part of a different group. And based on the previous command that we ran, that is this group membership, you can check if they're part of a group. And if not, you can add them to the group. Now that we have added the default-reader1 QuickSight user to the group, let's go back into the QuickSight console that we logged in as default-reader1 and refresh the screen. And you'll notice that they have access to QSTCF-dashboard. The reason being that we have shared the dashboard with the default-reader group, and since we've added the user default-reader1 to this group, they now have access to the dashboard that's been shared with the group. That we have seen how to create users and groups within QuickSight, the next concept that we'll be seeing is called multi-tenancy in QuickSight. Now, QuickSight users and groups are all contained in a namespace that we specify. So for example, in all of the commands that we have executed, we provided a value of default to the parameter namespace. This means that we did not create a new namespace in this AWS account or this QuickSight subscription that we have, but rather we are just using the existing default namespace. This means that all of the users and groups that we have provisioned, They're not isolated in any way. And if one user wants to share a resource with another user, they can go into the dashboard and they'll be able to see the different users who are part of this QuickSight subscription. Now, you might have a use case as part of an ISV that you have multiple clients. You have 5 to 10 different clients, and the users in for each of those clients, they should not see the users and groups that are part of a different client. You want to logically isolate all of the users so that you can only share those resources that a particular client's users are supposed to see. Now, you can implement this in QuickSight with a feature called namespaces. Namespaces allows you to logically separate users. So for example, consider the purple box here that represents an AWS account, and within that we have one QuickSight subscription. Here you have your data source that could be a database or S3 or Athena, and you have created multiple data sets and a dashboard in your QuickSight subscription. With namespace, you can create a new namespace for each one of your clients or customers that you want to onboard into your environment. So for example, for customer one, we have created namespace one. So any user and group that is part of customer one, they would be provisioned or they can be provisioned within namespace one. And similarly, users and groups part of customer two can be provisioned under namespace two. So this way, if an author in namespace one creates an analysis or a dashboard, and if they're trying to share it with all of the users, they'll only see the users who are part of namespace one. Even if they select share with all, the dashboard or analysis will only be shared with all of the users who are part of namespace one. Now this isolation applies only to users and groups, but all of the QuickSight resources like datasets, data sources, dashboards, and analysis, they all are created outside of a namespace. So this way, you can create one dashboard and you can choose to share it with just one namespace, or you can choose to share that dashboard with multiple namespaces if you think that data is applicable to all of your customers or multiple customers. Let's take this same scenario. So let's assume that you are onboarding a new customer. You have already created a base dashboard that takes data from a dataset, and that dataset pulls in data from a database table. Now, for all of your customers, you want to show the same dashboard, but with different data pertaining to each individual customer. In QuickSight, you can create a template of a dashboard, and out of that template, you can create multiple dashboards. So you have the same set of visuals that the original dashboard has. And for each of the new dashboard that you create, you can point it to a different data set, which in turn can pull data from a different database table or from the same database table. This way, you don't have to manually create new dashboards and visuals, but rather use existing dashboards and point it to new data. And any of the dashboards that you create, you can share it with individual namespace or in turn share it with individual customer. Now we have a base dashboard here, and out we create a template, and using that template, we create a dashboard for customer one and point that to a data set that is meant only for customer one. Now, programmatically, you can create templates and multiple dashboards when you onboard a new customer. And also using QuickSight APIs, you can programmatically recreate datasets as well. So for example, with the original dataset that you created, you can extract the metadata of that dataset and create new datasets. So you do not have to go in and manually modify any filters or column names or row count, anything that is part of the original dataset. You can use the same metadata to recreate the datasets. So you can automate and program the entire workflow. So when customer 3 is onboarded into your environment, Your workflow can trigger creating a new dashboard after the template, creating new dataset from the base dataset, and point it to a different database table or the source that's appropriate to customer 3. Now, let's see how we can create a namespace in QuickSight and add users to that particular namespace and see if they are able to access or see other users that are present in the same QuickSight environment. Going back to Cloud9, you should see a folder called multi-tenancy. Expand the folder, and these are the commands that we'll be running today to create a new namespace and add users to namespace. Open the exercise 1-1, and you'll see a command called create namespace. Now this command provisions a new namespace in our QuickSight environment, and it takes the AWS account ID as an input. We also pass a parameter called identity store. Now we're passing the value QuickSight because we need all of these details about this namespace to be managed and stored within QuickSight. We pass the namespace name. Here we are provisioning a namespace name called customer1, and we are passing the identity region. Let's run this command. Now that this command is executed, it's created a new namespace for us called customer1 in our environment. Now currently from the QuickSight console, we cannot see what are the different namespaces that are present in the QuickSight subscription. You can run an API or CLI command to list the different namespaces that are part of your subscription. So even if as the admin user, if I go in to manage QuickSight, I'll only see the users that are part of my current QuickSight subscription. Now to test this new namespace feature, let's create an IAM user in my AWS account. When we have a namespace, we cannot use users invited via email that use their own username and password, meaning we cannot use those users whose identity type is QuickSight. Namespaces is meant for those use cases where your users federate into QuickSight from your application, or those users who are using IAM user or IAM roles within your AWS console to navigate to QuickSight. So we'll create a new IAM user in our AWS console and map that with a QuickSight user. So anytime they log into QuickSight, they are automatically navigated to the corresponding namespace where we want that user to go. So I'll open the IAM console. I'll go into users and I'll click on add users on the right. I will provide a username and I want that user to access the AWS console as well as QuickSight. So I'll provide them a password access. I'll provide a custom password for them. And I do not want that user to generate a new password. So choose permissions. Here, I'm not creating or providing any permission for this IAM user because I do not want them to access any AWS services. Rather, I just want them to go into QuickSight as the QuickSight user that I create. So I'll choose attach existing policies directly. I'm not attaching any policies at the moment. I'll choose next tags and I'll choose preview and I'll click on create user. Now that we have created this IAM user, let's go back into Cloud9 and let's check if our namespace that we created is still in creating status or if it has been created. To check the current status of a namespace, you can run a command called describe namespace. Now, describe namespace takes the AWS account ID as well as the namespace name that you want to obtain the details of. So we'll pass customer1 as a namespace name. And once we execute this command, we should see that the creation status is created now. And this command also provides more details about the namespace, including its ARN that uniquely identifies this namespace, its name, its identity store, as well as its capacity region, that is US East 1. That is also our identity region. Once I have confirmed that the namespace has been created, let's create a new QuickSight user within this namespace. To do that, open command or open exercise 4-1, and we'll be running the same register user command that we executed earlier. We'll just be passing different parameters. So in the same command, if you notice, the identity type that we're using is IAM now, meaning that the QuickSight user that we are going to create is mapped to an IAM user. That is the IAM user that we just created. So the IAM ARN points to the IAM user customer1-author1 that was just created. We have that as the IAM-ARN parameter. The user role is author since we want this user to go in and create new content. And also, we have provided a dummy email address as the email parameter, and the region is our identity region. Let's click on run. Now, if you'll notice the output of the register user command that we just created, you'll see that the username is customer1-author1. Even though we did not provide a username parameter explicitly in the CLI command, since we are creating an IAM identity type user and we are mapping them to an IAM user, QuickSight automatically picked up the username from the IAM username. So it's the same as the IAM username that we have here. The identity type is IAM. Their role is an author within QuickSight. We have their email address that we provided, and we have their distinct user ARN. Now let's open a new private window and try to log in as the new IAM user that we just created and also is mapped to our new QuickSight user called customer1-author1. So I'll open a new private window. I will navigate to QuickSight. I'll log out of the previous session that I opened. And here I'll need to provide the account name. Now the QuickSight account name I have in my environment is this. That is my AWS account. Now to log in as the QuickSight user in a custom namespace, I'll first log into my AWS console as that IAM user. So I'll go into the console. I want to log in as the IAM user that I created earlier, so I'll provide the AWS account ID. Choose next. And here I'll provide the IAM username and password that I just created earlier. And I'll choose sign in. Once I sign into the AWS console as the new IAM user that I created, I can navigate to QuickSight from the AWS console. I'll search for QuickSight at the top search bar in my AWS console, and I'll click on QuickSight. And I'm automatically navigated to the QuickSight console. Now that I'm in the QuickSight console, to confirm that this user is indeed created in a custom namespace, you can click on the username at the top right and choose the username option. And here you will see the account name as the namespace name that we provisioned. So customer one is the custom namespace that we created, and we created this user in customer one namespace. So instead of my AWS account ID showing as the account name, it's showing customer one, meaning that we have successfully created this user in a custom namespace. So if I go back to QuickSight as my admin user, and if I open my username, you'll see that the account name that I have in my QuickSight subscription is just my AWS account ID. And also from the console, or if I navigate back to any of the dashboard that I have, if I try to share this dashboard with the user in the custom namespace, I would not be able to find that user here. So if I look for that user, it will not be listed here because that customer one hyphen author one user is part of a custom namespace. But the admin user that I have or that I'm logged in here is part of the default namespace. Now, one use case that you can expand namespaces to is federating users. So for example, you have users federating into QuickSight or AWS console from your application. Some of the users you want to provision in a custom namespace, while other users can be part of the default namespace. To implement this scenario, consider an Okta user that I have. I'll close this session and I'll open a new private window. Now I'm logging in as an Okta user so that I can federate into QuickSight. Now in my Okta developer environment, I have set up federation so that this Okta user can federate into my QuickSight running in this AWS account here. I've set this federation up so any user who wants to navigate into QuickSight, they will be assuming an IAM role that I have defined in my account. So if I go into the IAM console, and if I go into roles, look for Okta, I have two different roles created here. So in the previous step, we created an IAM user and saw how that IAM user can navigate to a custom namespace. Here, I have set up federation to assume the role that I have here, that is the QS Okta author role. So the Okta user that I just logged in, I want this user to be provisioned or navigated to a custom namespace when I choose the AWS QuickSight application in my Okta console. Let's see how we can do that. Let's go back to Cloud9. We'll be creating a new user for the Okta user that I just logged in as. So I'll use the same register user command. Here under identity type, I'll still be using IAM, but IAM ARN, I will be pointing it to the role that is tied with my Okta federation. So I'll open this QS Okta author role. I'll copy the ARN of this role. I'll replace the ARN in this command. I want the Okta user to be an author in QuickSight. I'll use the same email address. And there is one additional parameter that I have to pass to the register user command to link my Okta user. So I have already passed the IAM ARN as the IAM role. I will also pass a new parameter called session name that uniquely identifies my Okta user here. So I'll pass my Okta user username. Now, the reason we're passing the Okta user's username here as a session name is because we might have multiple Okta users, and each of those Okta users might still be assuming or federating into the AWS environment using the same role. In order to uniquely identify those users in QuickSight, we'll be providing this username as a session name here. So a combination of the IAM role name and the session name that we provided will be used to create a new QuickSight user. Let's see how the output is for this command. Let's run this command. Once this command is executed, if you notice the output username, you'll see we have the QS Okta author role, that is the role name, slash the session name is used together as the QuickSight username. This way, even if you have a different Okta user called Raj at Amazon.com, the corresponding QuickSight username would be QS Okta author role slash Raj at Amazon.com, uniquely identifying and establishing a relationship between the Okta user as well as the QuickSight user. Now that we have created this user, let's go back into the Okta Federation console and the application that I have in Okta, and let's choose AWS QuickSight. As you can see, I've successfully federated into QuickSight as the Okta user. And at the top right, if I click on my username, you should see the username that has been provided as the output in the command that we ran in Cloud9 is the username being used here as well. And if you notice the account name, it says customer1, meaning that this federated user is part of the custom namespace that we created, that is customer1. This way, you can have multiple users who are federating using different IDPs, be it SAML federation or OpenID federation. You can have or provision those users in custom namespaces in QuickSight and logically separate those users. Now, setting up federation between Okta and QuickSight, we do have a blog post as well as our documentation. We do have a link that we can provide, but it's not part of this workshop today. Now that we have created a custom namespace and added users to the custom namespace, How do we share a dashboard that we created to a custom namespace user? So using the console in the default namespace that I am in, I have this dashboard. Now, if I go into share and share dashboard, I'm not going to see the users that I have in my custom namespace called customer one. To share dashboards or resources across namespaces, in QuickSight, we have CLI command for appropriate resources, including dashboards, analysis, datasets, and data sources. So, for example, we have a command that shows what permissions or which QuickSight user or group has access to a dashboard. Let's see how we can check that first. Open up exercise 7-1 under multi-tenancy, and we have a command called describe dashboard permissions. This command shows us the different users and groups who have access to a particular dashboard. So we'll be passing a dashboard ID to this command. Now the dashboard ID we are passing here corresponds to the dashboard that we have in QuickSight created for us by CloudFormation. So going back to Cloud9, I'll run this command. Now from the output of the command, you can see the dashboard ARN that uniquely identifies the dashboard ID that we just passed to the command, and the permissions section lists all the users or groups who have access to this dashboard. So under permissions, you have actions. The actions contain the different permissions that someone has on this dashboard. For example, someone can open this dashboard, describe the dashboard, they can delete or update the dashboard. To see who has access to all of these permissions, the principal section uniquely identifies that. So under principal section, you'll have the ARN of the QuickSight user or a group. So here we have the ARN of our QuickSight admin user that we have logged in here currently. So as the admin user, I have access to do anything with this dashboard. And also we have another section where the principal is the group that we created earlier. So we created the default -radar group and we share this dashboard with the group. So the entire group has access to this dashboard, and any users who are part of this dashboard will also have access to this dashboard. Now that we have seen how permissioning is applied on a dashboard, we'll see a command that we can execute to update the permission of a dashboard. Now, in that command, we'll be passing the custom namespace user as the principal so that the dashboard is shared with the user across the namespace. To do that, open exercise 7-2 under multi-tenancy, and you'll see a command called update dashboard permissions. Now, the update dashboard permission takes in the dashboard ID to which we want to update the permission or add users or groups who need access to the dashboard. We'll be passing a parameter called grant permissions. The grant permissions section defines the different permissions that we want to provide for a particular user as well as the principal of the user. So if you'll notice the grant permissions section, it has actions which details all of the permissions that we want to provide. And it has a section for principal wherein we are providing the ARN of the user that we created in our custom namespace. So here we have the identity region that is USES1, my AWS account ID, and a user denoting that it is a QuickSight user, and customer one denoting that this user is in namespace customer one. And here, instead of the customer one -author one user, I will provide the username of my Okta user, who's also part of QuickSight in the same customer one namespace. So I'll go back to the private window I had open earlier. I'll copy the username from here, and I'll update the command here. Now, the QuickSight user that I federated from Okta should have access to this dashboard here, even though they're part of a different namespace once I run this command. Let's check that in action. I'll click on Run. Now, once the Update Dashboard Permissions command is executed, you'll see another section under Permissions for this dashboard, which denotes that the corresponding user, that is the federated user, also has access to the dashboard. So now the group, the QuickSight admin, as well as the user in a different namespace have access to this dashboard. And let me open the session as the federated user. Let me go into dashboards. And now we can see that the dashboard has been shared with this user across a namespace. So using the update permissions command, you can add permissions to different AWS resources, including dashboards, analysis, datasets, and data sources, and share these resources with users or groups across different namespaces. So if you're onboarding a new customer into your environment, you can run the update permissions command, and you can share a dashboard with the entire user base in the new namespace that you built for the new customer. This way, we have set up multi-tenancy in the QuickSight environment that I have here to enable different namespaces and users in those namespaces who are logically isolated from each other. Now that we have created users and namespaces in QuickSight, we'll take a short 5 minutes break, and then we can resume our workshop, and we'll see how we can apply custom permissions to restrict access to users in QuickSight.
Yeah, why don't we go ahead and resume at like 12:20 p.m.? Is that long enough for 12:25? What do you think, Raj?
Sure, 12:20 works. 12:25 works good. Yep.
Okay, it's now 12:25. Raj, are you about ready to get started again?
Yeah, I'm ready. We can get started.
Great. And I would just again call out that we're doing our best to keep all of the questions being answered in a good process. So I don't think there's anything outstanding right now, but please keep those coming, and hopefully everyone is getting some good use out of this. And let's jump into the next piece.
Thanks, Jill. So the next section that we are going to see in this workshop is applying custom permissions on users or groups within QuickSight. So custom permissioning enables you to restrict an author or a reader from doing certain activities within QuickSight. For example, you might have a use case where you add new users into your QuickSight environment. They should be authors so that they can create new analysis, but you do not want them to create any data sets or connect to any of your databases or Athena or S3. You just want to allow them to use existing data sets that you created for them so they can open up the data set, create an analysis, create a dashboard out of it, and share it with other users. But they should not have access to create a new data set at all. They should not see this new dataset button, which allows them to go in and create a new dataset either by uploading a file or using any of the supported sources. Restrictions like these can be implemented in QuickSight. To see what are the different restrictions that are supported in QuickSight, in the QuickSight console, click on your username as an admin user and go into Manage QuickSight. Under the Manage Users section, you'll see an option called Manage Permissions. This page lists all the custom permissions that you created. Since we have not created any custom permission yet, I'll choose Create. And you can see all of the different restrictions that I can apply on a user. So for example, I can restrict a user from adding or running anomaly detection within an analysis. I can restrict users from exporting a visual to Excel or CSV. I can even restrict them from sharing an analysis or a dashboard with other users. The section Datasets and Data Sources allow restricting a user to create a new data source or a dataset. So if you choose the option here, creating or updating all data sources, this would restrict a particular user on which this permission is applied on to create any new data source at all, meaning that they cannot connect to any existing databases or Athena or S3, or even upload a file to create a new data source in QuickSight. Also, under a datasets section, if I click on the checkbox next to creating or updating all datasets, this would restrict the user from creating any dataset at all, and they will only have to use the dataset that you shared with them to create new analysis or dashboards. These two options checked, I'll provide a name for this custom permission. And I'll click on Create. Currently in QuickSight, you can create the restriction or the custom permissions using the QuickSight console, but to apply this custom permission on a user, you have to use CLI or API command. Now, the way that we can apply this custom permission on a user is using a command called update user. So capture or note down the name that we gave for our custom permission and navigate to Cloud9. Expand the folder under custom permissions and open exercise 3.1, and you'll see the command update user. We'll be passing the account ID, the namespace, the username on which we want to apply the custom permission that we just created in QuickSight. Their role is an admin, and we'll still be using the same email address. So in this command, the role is admin because we'll be applying this custom permission on the admin user that I'm currently logged in as. The email address is the email address of my admin user. And the custom permission's name is the parameter that we'll use to refer to the custom permission that we just created. So that would be QSWS-custom permission, and we'll be passing the identity region as well. Let's run this command. Now, once this command has been executed, you'll see that the custom permission that we created has been applied to the user. We have the username and the custom permission name that corresponds to what has been applied. We have the ARN, the email, and the active status is true because we are still an active user in the QuickSight environment. Now, with this in place, let's navigate back to QuickSight. I'll go back to the QuickSight homepage. Now I'm still logged in as the admin user. I'll go into Datasets section and I'll refresh my screen. Now you'll notice that the new dataset button that was present earlier is not available anymore for this user, meaning that the custom permission which restricts users to create any kind of dataset at all has been applied to the admin user that we are currently logged in as. So I cannot create any datasets, I cannot connect to any databases, but I'll only have to use the existing datasets that I already created or that have been shared with me. Now, to remove any custom permission applied on a particular QuickSight user, we can use the same update user command, but the parameter that we'll be passing to remove a custom permission is called unapply custom permissions. So let's see that command in action. Let's open exercise 4.1. Here you'll notice that we're using the same update user command. We're passing AWS account ID and namespace and the username of our admin user, their role and email address, and the new parameter here is unapply custom permissions. So this will remove any custom permission applied on our admin user. Let's run this command. Once that command has been successfully executed, you'll notice that the custom permissions option in the output is not present anymore, meaning that no custom permission is applied on this user that we have. Now let's go back into the QuickSight UI. Let's refresh the screen. And now you'll notice that the new dataset button is present again for the admin user, meaning that the custom permission has been removed from this user and the user is now free to create any new dataset in QuickSight, connecting to any of the supported data sources. Now, this way, you can create and manage multiple custom permissions on any of your users within QuickSight, restricting them from access to any of these features detailed here. Now that we have seen custom permissions, let's see another feature in QuickSight that allows you to set values or set any customizations across your QuickSight subscription. So within QuickSight, you can apply account level customizations and you can set a default theme that users can use when they're creating any type of analysis. So for example, when I go into QuickSight, I'll go into dataset section and I'll open the dataset that CloudFormation created for me and I'll choose create analysis. I'll add two different fields to create a sample visual. And you'll notice that currently when I created this analysis, by going to the themes section, the applied theme is classic. Now, QuickSight supports themes that enables you to choose different data colors for your visuals, background color, foreground color, change the different fonts, or even add or remove borders and grid lines between visuals or in your analysis. Now, you might have a use case where when you add new users to QuickSight, you all want them all to create analysis with a standard template that you provided so that the dashboards that they create is unified and is aligned with your company's color scheme or theme. So here, if you see, we have a custom theme called QSTCF-theme. We can apply account level customization so that this QSTCF-theme is the default theme when a user comes into QuickSight and tries to create an analysis. Let's see how we can apply account level customization using CLI command. Navigate back to Cloud9 and expand the folder under account customization. Here, open the first exercise 2-1.sh file, and here you'll see the command create account customization. Now, this command takes in a parameter called account customization, and in the parameter we'll be passing the default theme and the value as the ARN of the theme. So if I go back into QuickSight, if I open Starter Themes under the Themes section in the left navigation, you'll see QuickSight presents us with 3 different themes that we can use in our analysis. So in the command that we have here, I'll be setting Midnight Theme as the default theme that I want my users to use every time they launch or create an analysis. So going back to Cloud9, I'll click on Run. Now that this command has been executed, we can see that the default theme has been set to the Midnight theme in this AWS account ID where we have our QuickSight environment. Now, if you want to check any existing account customization has been enabled in your account, or to see if any account customization has been added recently, you can describe the different account customizations that you have in your QuickSight subscription. To do that, open exercise 2-2 under account customization, and you'll see a command called describe account customization. Let's run this command. We have passed in our current AWS account ID as the AWS account ID parameter. And here you can see the account customization has been applied. That is, we have set a default theme and we have pointed it to the Midnight theme. Let's see how this works in QuickSight now. So if I go into QuickSight, I'll go back to the QuickSight homepage as the admin user. I'll go into dataset section. I'll use the same QSTCF dataset and I'll choose create analysis. Now you'll notice that by default, the background color is different from the analysis that I created earlier. To see how this happens, go into themes on the left navigation, and you'll see that the applied theme is Midnight now, based on the account level customization that we set using CLI. So this way, you can allow your QuickSight users or authors to start with the default theme so that any visuals and dashboards that they create aligns with your company's or your application's overall theme and color scheme. Now that we have applied account customization, you often hear the requests from customers about porting or migrating content from one environment to another. So for example, you might have a use case where you have set up a development environment and a production environment. So any resource like a dashboard or analysis that you create in your development environment, after it has been vetted and validated, you might want to promote it or move it into your production environment. Now, your production environment can be the same QuickSight subscription in the same AWS account, but in a different region, or that environment could be a different namespace altogether, or that environment could be a totally different AWS account with the new QuickSight subscription there. Using QuickSight APIs and CLI, you can programmatically migrate content across different environments, including different AWS account ID or different AWS regions. So let's revisit the slide that we saw earlier. So in this slide, we saw how we can use namespaces to segregate different users. So here we also show how we have a dashboard and how with templates we can create multiple dashboards so that each dashboard can be shared with the corresponding namespace. And we also have a data set, and using APIs, We can create multiple datasets and apply customer-specific filters or change them to point to a new source, for example, a new database table. In this section of the workshop, we'll see how we can extract information from an existing dataset, use that information to create a new dataset, and also we'll be seeing how we can create a template of a dashboard that we have, and using that template, how we can create new dashboards programmatically. This workflow or these APIs or CLI commands would enable you to quickly onboard new clients into your ISV environment or migrate content across different environments. Navigate back to Cloud9 and expand the folder Content Porting. Now, what we'll be trying to achieve in this section is we want to create a new dashboard based on the dashboard that we have here, that is QSTCF-dashboard that was created by CloudFormation for us. In order to create a new dashboard, we want to create a new dataset as well. So this dashboard is using the QSTCF-dataset. So we want to create a new dataset that is based on the QSTCF-dataset. And if we open the QSTCF dataset, you'll notice that it is pointing to a data source. Now, a data source in QuickSight has connection information. For example, when you create a new data source in QuickSight, or when you go into new dataset section within QuickSight and choose any of the supported data sources, Redshift, for example, if you have any instances or if you have any Redshift clusters running in your environment, you can select that here. You can provide the database name, you can provide the username and password. And when you click on create data source, all of these information here are saved within QuickSight as a data source. Now, if you scroll down, you'll see from existing data sources section, which shows all of the different data sources that you already have in your AWS QuickSight subscription. So we had our QSTCF data set that had the QSTCF-data source as its data source. So if I open this and if I choose edit data source, you'll see that this data source is pointing to an S3 bucket and using the files in the S3 bucket to create the new data set. So in essence, a data source contains all the connection related information for a data set, and the data set actually has information about the columns, the different rows that you want to use, if you want to exclude any columns, or even if you want to rename any columns. So for example, if I open the dataset, QSTCF dataset, and choose edit dataset, you'll see these are the information that will be stored in the dataset. So on the left, you'll see the different fields that we have. You can include or exclude any field by selecting that field and choosing exclude field. You can add a new calculated field. You can even apply filters on this data set. So for example, you have this data set as your base data set, but if you want to create a new data set for a different client, and if you want to apply any filters so that all of the data here is restricted only for that client, you can apply a filter here based on client ID, for example, just as a sample. And also you can come in and rename the different fields that you have here and also change the data type of those fields. Optionally, you can also add new data so that you can join a different database table or even like data from a different data source to your current data set. Now, once you save this, all of the information or all of the changes that you did here are saved as part of the data set. So in a sense, if we want to migrate a dashboard, we want to point that dashboard to a different data set, we need to create a new data source, we need to create a new data set, and then we can create a new dashboard out of a template so that the data that is being shown in the new dashboard points to the new data set and in turn points to the new data source that is appropriate for the new client. Now let's go back to Cloud9 and under content porting, open exercise 1-2. Here you'll see a command called describe data source. So what we'll be doing in this command is we'll see what are the different metadata that we have for a particular data source in QuickSight. Now the data source that we'll be using is a data source QSTCF-data source that has been created by CloudFormation for us. So I'll run this command. Upon successfully executing this command, you'll see that the data source parameter section in the result shows what type of data source it is. So for example, here we have the S3 parameters and it points to the S3 bucket and it points to the JSON file that we are using as a manifest file, meaning that this file is pointing to this bucket and we're pulling the data from the bucket that is mentioned here. And in the result, if you notice the type section, it shows S3, meaning that this data source is an S3 based data source. We also have the last updated time and the ARN that uniquely identifies this data source. Now we've obtained the metadata about one of our existing data source. Let's also run a command that shows what are the permissions associated with this data source, meaning which QuickSight user or group has access to this data source. To do that, we'll be using describe data source permissions. So that is in exercise 1-3. We'll be passing the data source ID as a parameter to describe data source permission. And I'll run the command. Here, under principal section, you see my current QuickSight admin user has access to this data source. They have owner level access, meaning my QuickSight admin user can delete this data source and update this data source or share this data source with other users. Now that we have the metadata about our existing data source as well as the permissions, we can use these two information to create a new data source in QuickSight. This way, we don't have to manually provide most of the details when creating the new data source, and we'll be modeling the new data source that has the exact same information or parameters that our existing data source has. For this workshop, we'll be creating the new data source in the same AWS account ID, but with the appropriate IAM permissions, you can create the data source in a different AWS account or a different AWS region. Let's see what the command is to create a new data source. So under content porting, open exercise 1-1, and here we have the command create data source, but we're not running the command yet to create a data source, but rather we're running the help option for the CLI command to see what are the different parameters that are needed to execute the create data source command. Let's run this. Now from the help section of a particular command, we can see the syntax that is required to run the CLI command and the different parameters that are mandatory as well as optional. So for example, if we want to create a data source using CLI, we need to pass the AWS account ID, we'll need to pass the data source ID, we'll need to pass the name that we want to give to our new data source, and we'll need to pass the type, meaning if the data source is based on S3 or Athena or any of the supported databases. Now, all of the other parameters that you see in brackets here are optional. So you can either provide those values or they can be skipped at the moment. Now, instead of having to manually provide the name and type and different parameters, we can use the commands that we ran previously, including the describe data source as well as describe data source permissions, to obtain the type, the data source parameters, the data source permissions, and send this directly to the create data source command, thereby reducing any additional manual efforts in having to provide these values ourselves. Let's see how we can do that. Open exercise 1-4 and you'll see the create data source command here. Now, we are passing the AWS account ID. We're giving the new data source a name that is appending that is QSTCF-data source-v2. We are passing the data source ID. We're passing the same value that we are passing for the name so that the ID of the data source is QSTCF-data source-v2 as well. And we are passing the data source parameters. So if you check the help section of create data source command, you'll see it also takes data source parameters as an optional parameter, which we're passing here. But instead of providing manual values ourselves, we're running the describe data source command here within the same create data source command, so that the metadata about our existing data source, including the data source parameters, the type, are all pulled in and being used to create our new data source. You'll also notice the permission section here, that is a permissions parameter for the new data source. So under permissions, we're running describe data source permission command. So this in turn will fetch the permissions that is associated with our existing data source and apply the same level of permission on the new data source that we are creating. So this way we are combining multiple CLI commands and taking the output of multiple CLI command and passing it to a new CLI command. Let's run this command here. Once this command is executed, you'll see the creation status of your new data source. You'll see the data source ID that you provided when running the command, and you also can see the ARN that uniquely identifies the new data source. To see if the data source has been successfully created, navigate back to QuickSight. Go into the dataset section on the left navigation and choose new dataset from the top right. And when you scroll down, you should see the new data source that we just created using a CLI command, that is QSTCF-data source-v2. Now that we have created a data source, let's use a similar approach to create a new data set based on this data source that we just created. So we go back into the data sets. We want to create a new data set that is similar to QSTCF-data set, but uses the new data source that we just created. Let's see how we can do that. Navigate back to Cloud9. Open exercise 2-1sh. Now, this file has a command to see what are the different parameters that we might need to create a new dataset in QuickSight using CLI. So we have AWS QuickSight create dataset, and we're running the help option as a parameter. When I run this command, This will return the syntax needed to run the create dataset command and show all the different parameters that are mandatory as well as optional. So we'll be passing the AWS account ID, an ID for the dataset as the dataset ID, a name for the new dataset, and we'll be passing a physical table map that maps to our source data schema, optionally a logical table map that maps to the modifications that we did at the dataset level, the import mode, meaning if we want to store the data in QuickSight Spice or if we want to directly query the data, and other optional parameters. Now, let's see how physical table map, logical table map, and all of these parameters looks like for an existing dataset. To do that, let's describe our existing dataset that we have here, that is QSTCF dataset, and look at the metadata that is returned by the describe dataset command. So open exercise 2-2, and you'll see AWS QuickSight describe dataset. We want to describe the QSTCF dataset, so we are passing that as a dataset ID parameter. And then let's run this command. And when this command is executed, you'll see the output showing the metadata of that particular dataset. So you can see the dataset section of the output that shows the different output columns, meaning if I go in and if I open the QSTCF dataset, and if I choose edit dataset, pretty much these are the different fields that I can use in any analysis that I create out of this dataset. So all of these values or all of these fields you should be able to see in the output column section. It shows the actual field name and what type or what the data type of that field is. For example, date time here is a date type field, and here we have a column called salesperson, and the data type of salesperson field is string. So this details all of the different fields and its data type. And we have a parameter called import mode that says spice, meaning that the dataset that we have here is a spice-based dataset. So all the data from the source is moved into QuickSight Spice that we can verify from the left navigation section on the bottom. Under query mode, it shows spice. And then we have the physical table map. Now, the physical table map details the schema of the underlying source. So for example, you can have a file. So for example, in this data set, we are pulling data from a CSV file that is in an S3 bucket. So we have the upload settings, meaning it shows the file format of the underlying file is CSV, the text qualifier that is double quotes, if it has any header or not, and what type of delimiter is being used that file. Under physical table map, you'll see in a section called input columns. Now, the input column shows what the actual column names and actual type of the column is in the underlying source. So in the S3 bucket CSV file from which we've created the dataset here, it has different columns, and the column name are just simply column ID -1, column ID -2, and it also shows what data type those columns are. So the data in the S3 bucket can have any column name, and within QuickSight, you can come in and rename those columns here. Now, once you rename a column, say for example, if I change region to region 1 here and choose apply, within QuickSight dataset, it shows as region 1, even though the underlying CSV file might still have the column name as region. Now, all of the changes that we do here within the edit dataset page are captured under logical table map. So logical table map is a section where you can know or see the additional modification or changes that you did to your dataset. So it shows all of the customizations that have been made, including changing any column names. So for example, under the data transform section in logical table map, you'll see rename column operation. That means that the underlying CSV file has a column called column ID-12, but when the QuickSight dataset was created, that column was renamed to its latest. Similarly, you can see the different rename options that have been done. So all of the columns that were imported from the CSV file in S3 have been renamed to appropriate column names within QuickSight for this particular dataset. Here we also have a parameter called tag column operation, wherein we have added a tag to the region field. So we have the region field here. We have added a tag to this field. So it shows us date. That is detailed here. And finally, we have the project operation where we have all the projected columns that are the columns or fields that are available to be used in any analysis that we create out of this data set. Now, there are other information that we can obtain when describing a data set, including the consumed spice capacity in bytes. If it's a spice-based data set, you'll see this option and shows how much bytes this particular data set has occupied in spice. The ARN that uniquely identifies this data set, its created time and last modified time, its name, and its dataset ID. Now, going back to create dataset command, you'll see that if we want to create a new dataset using API or CLI, we need to pass the physical table map and optionally logical table map if we want to make any changes. For example, changing the column name or adding any filters. And if we want to add any tags or if we want to change the import mode. Now, when creating a new dataset, we can manually create all of these values, including the physical table map and logical table map. Or if you want to use an existing dataset's physical table map and logical table map and simply update just a section of it, for example, rename one of the columns or add a filter, you can reuse the metadata of an existing dataset and pass it directly to create dataset command so that you don't have to manually add additional options. So now let's see how we can use the existing datasets metadata and pass all of these values to create a new dataset. Let's open exercise 2-4. Here we have a command that extracts or that describes our dataset that we have in QuickSight, that is QSTCF dataset, obtains all of the information that we have in the described dataset called including physical table map, logical table map, projected columns and output columns. And also we are running another command to describe the dataset permissions so that users who are having access to the existing dataset can have the same level of access on the new dataset that we create. So we are extracting both the dataset description as well as the permission, and we are storing it in a file called create_dataset.json. Let's run this command. Now, from the output of the command, you can see that the data about our existing dataset as well as the permissions on the existing dataset has been copied over to a JSON file, and we'll be passing the information in this JSON file to our create dataset command to create a new dataset. So in this JSON file, we have provided a new name that we want to name our new dataset. So for example, we provided the dataset ID and name as QSTCF-dataset-v2. So the new dataset that we create will have this name and ID. Now using this JSON file, let's create a new dataset. Open exercise 2-5. And here we have the create dataset command, and we'll be passing the JSON file that we just created in our previous section. I'll run this command. And we can see that the new dataset has been created with information obtained from our existing dataset, as well as the permission associated with our existing dataset. To confirm this, let's go into QuickSight. Go into the QuickSight analysis section, navigate to the dataset section, and you'll see the new dataset has been created called QSTCF-dataset-v2. Now, if you click on the dataset and choose Edit Dataset, you should see the field names, the data type, everything is similar to the existing dataset that we had. Click on Cancel. Now, we've created a data source, we've created a data set. We'll also create a new theme from one of the existing themes that we have. So if I go into the analysis section and open up any of the analysis that I created recently, if I go into themes, I'll see a theme called QSTCF-theme. Using CLI, I'll create a new theme that is very similar to the QSTCF-theme so that I can use the new theme on any of the new analysis or datasets that I create programmatically. So I'll go back to Cloud9. I'll open exercise 3.2. Here in this exercise, we have a command called describe theme, which shows all of the information about the current theme that we have. So the current theme that we have has a theme ID of QSTCF-theme. So I'll run this command. You'll see that the details about the current theme has been shown as an output here. So we know from the status that is creation successful, meaning that this theme was successfully created and is usable. And we have the base theme ID, meaning this theme has been created from a QuickSight provided theme called Seaside. It has the theme version number, the created time, and under configuration, you see what changes have been made to the base theme called Seaside to create this new theme. So the primary background color and secondary background color have been changed. You'll see the ARN of this theme. This is the ARN of this theme version, and you'll see the ARN of the entire theme itself. The type is custom, signifying that it is a custom theme created by a user or CloudFormation, and the name of the theme. Now, using this information and the permissions associated with the theme. So to obtain the permissions associated with the theme, exercise open exercise 3-3. We can run the describe theme permissions command. It shows which QuickSight user has access to this theme. So with a combination of the permission as well as the description of our current theme, let's go ahead and create a new theme. I'll open exercise 3.4, and here we have a command that executes both describe theme as well as describe theme permission on our current or existing theme and saves all the information in a file called createtheme.json. So we can then pass this createtheme.json file to create a new theme. So when I run this command, you can see that the information about our previous theme, including the changes or configuration that we want to do, as well as the permission associated with the theme, has been saved into a JSON file. Now, when I open exercise 3.5, I have a command called QuickSight create theme, in which I will pass the create theme.json file created in the previous command. So this will in turn create a new theme based on the current theme that we have. I will run this command. And you can see that a new theme has been successfully created using CLI. To verify this, we can go into the QuickSight console and check if the new theme exists. So if I go into the QuickSight console, if I refresh the screen in the existing analysis that I have, I'll go to the theme section on the left navigation, and under themes, you should see the new theme that we just created using CLI is available to be used. Now, we have created a new data source, we have created a new data set, we have created a new theme using CLI command. Next, we'll see how we can create a template of an existing dashboard that we have in QuickSight, that is the dashboard QSTCF-dashboard. How we can create a template for this dashboard, and then we'll see how using that template, we can provision or create multiple dashboards that point to the new data set that we just created. The process that we'll be following is we'll be describing our existing dashboard in CLI, and we'll be using that information to create a new template. Let's see how we can do that. So I'll go back into Cloud9. Open exercise 4-1, and you should see a command, AWS QuickSight create template help. Running this command will show what are the different parameters that are required to create a new template in QuickSight. When I run this command, from the output of the command, we can see that to create a new template, we need to pass the account ID, template ID, and name the template, and the permission section, meaning which QuickSight user or users or groups have access to this template, the source entity, which details the underlying dashboard or analysis from which the template has to be created, the version description tags that you want to apply on this template. Now, the source entity here should point to an analysis that you want to use as a base for your template. Also, the source entity contains information about the schema of the dataset that you're using and the dataset that you're using in the underlying analysis. For example, when I go back into QuickSight console and go into the analysis section, I have the QSTCF analysis here that was created for me using CloudFormation. When I open the analysis, I can see that this analysis is using the QSTCF-dataset as a dataset. Now, I want to create a template of this analysis here. So I'll go back into Cloud9, and I'll pull up all of the information that I have for this analysis that I just showed. So open exercise 4.2, and here we have the command called describe analysis. We are describing the analysis that we have here, that is the QSTCF-analysis. So we are passing that as the analysis ID, and I'll execute this command. Once this command is executed, you see the same information or some of the information that you see in the console, like the dataset ARN, meaning the underlying dataset from which the analysis has been created. If the analysis has multiple sheet or just one sheet, for this analysis, we just have one sheet and the corresponding sheet ID, when the analysis was created and when it was last updated, the name as well as the ID of the analysis, as well as the theme that this analysis is using. Now, we have the information that we need to pass as a source entity to create a template. So if we look at the create template command, the source entity will need the analysis ARN as well as details about the dataset being used in that analysis. Let's see how we can update all the necessary information. So open exercise 4.3, and in here we have a combination of commands wherein we'll be describing the analysis, pulling up the dataset information of the particular analysis, and we'll be storing those information in a create template.json file. So in turn, the create-template.json will have all of the necessary information that we can pass to create a new template in QuickSight. So I'll run this command. So once this command is executed, you can see that we have created a source entity section that has the source analysis parameter, and that points to the ARN of the analysis that we want to use. So we want to create a template of QSTCF-analysis. So we have the ARN here that is obtained by describing the analysis, the existing analysis that we have, and also we have the dataset reference section. Now, the dataset reference section has different placeholders for each of your datasets used in an analysis. So for example, if I go back into the QuickSight console and open up the QSTCF-analysis, on the left, under dataset section, you'll see that I'm using only one dataset here, that is QSTCF-dataset. In QuickSight, I can add multiple datasets to an analysis, so they will all show up here. So if we go back to Cloud9, you'll see that for the dataset that I'm using, that is the dataset ARN, QSTCF-dataset, we have a parameter called dataset placeholder called DS1. Now we have this placeholder so that if we create a new dashboard or analysis from a template, we can simply use a dataset placeholder name, that is DS1, and instead of the dataset ARN provided here, you can point it to a different dataset ARN. So for example, if I'm creating a new analysis out of the template, instead of QSTCF-dataset ARN, I'll provide the ARN of the dataset that I created using CLI command, that is QSTCF-dataset2. So the new analysis or dashboard that I create out of the template points to the new dataset. Now, let's use this information to create a template. I'll open exercise 4-4. Here we have the QuickSight create-template command, and we are passing the create-template.json file that we created in the previous section, and let's run this command. From the output of this command, we can see that a new template that is QSTCF-template-v2 is in progress. To see if the template has been successfully created, we can use a describe template command and pass the template ID that we have here. So we'll do that in exercise 4-5. We have the describe-template command. We'll be passing the template ID and run this command. And we can see that the template creation is successful, and we obtain the detail about the template that we just created. Currently, the QuickSight console does not have an option to list all the different templates that have been created. So we need to use the CLI and API commands to check or list all the different templates that are part of a QuickSight subscription and describe or get details about a particular template. Here, in the template that we just created, that is the QSTCF-template-v2, we have the source entity ARN, meaning that the source for this template is the analysis QSTCF-analysis. And we have the dataset configuration section, which details the schema of the dataset being used in this analysis. Now, the advantage of having this dataset schema under dataset configuration is, for example, if you're creating a new analysis or a dashboard based on this template, you might want to know what the underlying dataset schema is, so that if you're pointing the new analysis to a different dataset, there is no schema mismatch, and in turn, all the visuals load efficiently if it's the same schema. So if there is any schema mismatch, some or all of the visuals might not load because QuickSight won't be able to find the appropriate columns or fields in the new dataset that you use. So you can use the template description to verify that any new dataset that you want to use for the analysis or dashboard that you create out of a template, you can use this section to just ensure that the schema is matching. And here you'll notice the placeholder that is TS1. Now, when creating a new analysis, we can use the same placeholder name, but provide the ARN of a different dataset so that the new analysis or dashboard that we create out of the template uses the new dataset. We have the template ID, the creation time, and it has information about the sheets within the underlying analysis that is being used. So our source analysis has just one sheet called sheet 1, and we can see the sheet ID and the name of the sheet being used here. And also we have the theme that is being used by the underlying analysis. So in a sense, a template has information about the underlying analysis, as well as some level of information about the underlying dataset being used, including the schema. Now that we have our analysis in place, now that we have our template in place, let's use this template to create a new dashboard in QuickSight. QuickSight, we have a command called create dashboard. But to see what are the different parameters that we need to pass to create a new dashboard, let's run a command, describe dashboard, and help. So under exercise 5-1, if I run the command create dashboard help, I'll see the syntax that is needed to run the CLI command and create a new dashboard, as well as the parameters that I need to pass. So I'll be passing the account ID. I'll be providing the ID that I want my new dashboard to have, as well as the name that I want my new dashboard to have, different parameters, the permissions that I want to associate. So I provide access to different QuickSight users and groups for the new dashboard, as well as the source entity. Now, the source entity and all of these information, including permissions, can be obtained by describing an existing dashboard. So let me go ahead and describe an existing dashboard that I have so I can pull up some information from my existing dashboard and apply the same level of permission and information to create a new dashboard using the template that we just created. So I'll open exercise 5-2. We have a command called describe dashboard, and to this command we'll be passing the dashboard ID, that is qstcf-dashboard, which is the dashboard information that we want to obtain. I'll run this command. Now, from this describing an existing dashboard, we can see that the existing dashboard, that is qstcf-dashboard, that I have here in my QuickSight console, this qstcf-dashboard is based on an existing template that was created earlier by CloudFormation. It has information about the underlying analysis, including the sheet. It has information about the dataset that it is connected to, and also when the dashboard was last published, as well as the ARN that uniquely identifies this dashboard. Let's run another command to see which user in QuickSight has access to this dashboard. So we'll be running the describe dashboard permissions command again. So open exercise 5.3 and run describe dashboard permissions. It shows all of the users in QuickSight and group in QuickSight that has access to this dashboard. Now, a combination of these permissions as well as the details about the existing dashboard will be passed to create a new dashboard that points to the template that we just created. So first, let's obtain a combination of all of these information, or let's create a JSON file that we can pass to the create dashboard command. So I open exercise 5.4 and run the command. The command that we have here is a combination of describe dashboard, describe template, as well as describe dashboard permissions. A combination of all of the three commands that we executed earlier. So what this command does is it pulls information about our existing dashboard, the template that we created, as well as the permission associated with the existing dashboard, and creates a JSON file that we can simply pass to our create dashboard command. So if you notice the output of the command that we just ran, we have the source entity. And the source entity has a source template pointing to the template that we created using CLI, that is qstcf-template-v2. It has the dataset reference with the dataset placeholder called ds1. But here, if you'll notice, the dataset ARN is pointing to qstcf-dataset-v2, which is the dataset that we created using CLI. So if we create a new dashboard out of the information that we have here, the new dashboard will point to the new dataset that we created, and it will pull all the information from the template that we just created using CLI. The theme of the new dashboard will be using is the new theme that we created using CLI, and we extracted the permission of the existing dashboard so that all of the users and groups who had access to the existing dashboard will have access to the new dashboard as well. So from this theme, let's see how we can create a new dashboard. Open exercise 5-5, and here you'll have a command to create a new dashboard. Let me update the command here to run it in this environment. So I'm simply using the command that we have in the file, and I'm adding echo to it so we see the output of the command as well. So I'll run this command to create a dashboard by passing the JSON file that we created using the previous command. You can see that the dashboard is being created. So the creation status is creation in progress, and the dashboard ID and name is QSTCF-dashboard-v2. To check if the dashboard has successfully been created, we can navigate back to QuickSight. Go into QuickSight homepage, navigate to the dashboard section on the left, and you can see that a new dashboard, QSTCF-dashboard-v2, has been provisioned. Now if we open the dashboard and click on the data section at the top right, you can see the underlying dataset being used by this dashboard. That is the QSTCF-dataset-v2, which is a new dataset that we created using CLI. When we go into share on the top right and choose share dashboard and choose the manage dashboard access, you can see this new dashboard has the same level of permission that our previous or existing dashboard has. So this way, you can provision multiple dashboards using a template and point the new dashboards to different dataset that each has your specific customer related information. You can combine all of these commands into a workflow that you can implement to migrate content across different environments as well. Now, going back to our admin workshop, we have a section called SageMaker integration. Now, with QuickSight, you can integrate your existing SageMaker models or create new SageMaker models so that any data that is coming into QuickSight can be directed to the SageMaker model. And once the model is executed, the output or the result of the model can be brought back into QuickSight and utilized to create new visuals or create new analysis. So for example, if I have a SageMaker model that computes customer churn, and if I have new data coming in from Redshift, I already have a dataset created in QuickSight and I have an analysis. And continuously I'm pulling in data from Redshift. But if I want to use the SageMaker model, I do not have to move the data from Redshift to SageMaker, run it, store the output somewhere else, and then bring that back into QuickSight. I can simply integrate the SageMaker model to QuickSight so that when new data comes in from Redshift, QuickSight sends the data to SageMaker, and the SageMaker model is executed, and whatever output the SageMaker model sends back, QuickSight automatically retrieves it, and you can utilize it all within your dataset. So for example, if I go into QuickSight homepage, go into the dataset section, I'll open the QSTCF-dataset, and I'll choose the edit dataset. Under edit dataset, you'll see a section called Augment with SageMaker. So when you select that section, and you select the Augment with SageMaker option, you'll see a drop-down that shows the different SageMaker models that you might have in your account. So for example, in this environment, I do not have any SageMaker model, so it doesn't list anything. But if you create a new SageMaker model, it will show up here. You can provide a name for the model, and you can provide a schema. So a schema represents your dataset field names as well as the target field name that SageMaker model determines for you. So once you upload this and set it up, every time new data comes into your dataset, QuickSight will automatically integrate with the SageMaker model and retrieve the result, and the new column or predicted columns by the SageMaker model will show up in your QuickSight dataset page as new columns that you can utilize in your analysis. This section of the workshop walks you through creating a SageMaker model as well and shows you how you can integrate it. The SageMaker model takes several hours to execute, so I would recommend you run this exercise at your leisure, try it out at your end, and let us know your comments and feedback. With that, we've completed the admin workshop. We've seen how we can create new users and group in QuickSight, how we can create new namespaces so we can achieve multi-tenancy in QuickSight so that users and groups are logically isolated, thereby enabling you to onboard new clients and isolate all the users. We've seen how we can apply custom account level customization to enable specific themes for your users. We've also seen how we can apply restriction on authors or readers within your QuickSight environment so you do not allow them certain actions or functionalities within QuickSight. Also, we saw how we can use QuickSight CLI commands to migrate content or create new resources using existing resources. That I thank you for attending today's session, and if you have any feedback about today's session, we'd really appreciate any feedback you could provide. You can follow the link that's on screen here.